I'm Jeremy Zuki, one of the financial planners with Abundo Wealth. And as we do on our channel, we like to interview the rest of the advisor team with Abundo, but Abundo is much more than just advisors. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on as a company is the technology that we use to deliver our planning mission as an advice only planning firm. And our CEO and founder, Eric, was recently on a podcast with Michael Kitsis, and he talked a lot about the technology that's enabling Abundo's mission. And it was something that figured we might as well go right to the source and talk to the guy that builds all of this stuff. So he's a really impressive person, and we love his backstory. So Ethan Jung is with us today to talk all things Abundo and financial planning tech. Welcome, Ethan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jeremy. That was a very nice intro, and I appreciate it. Yeah.
And maybe just an easy place to start is just tell us about yourself and your background. I'm really curious just how you made your way into a very unique role within the financial planning industry of being sort of the tech guru of a big advice only firm.
Yeah, happy to talk about it. It's kind of a very winding path. Going back to college, I actually graduated with an environmental science degree. But kind of right around my senior year when I was just about to graduate, I really started getting into the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I kind of discovered that route through the kind of typical, Mr. Money Mustache, stuff like that. But it really got me very passionate about personal finance. And it got me, I really wanted to, find a way that I could share things that I had learned with other people. And so I actually wanted to become a financial planner. That was my goal. And I got started at a very large financial planning / insurance company. And as I was going into that job, I really thought there that I could, make a big difference. And maybe a little bit of naivety on my part, but pretty much about 3 months into there, I realized that the type of work that they were doing there is not something that I really wanted to be a part of. So I started looking for a small firm where I could, learn how to be a financial planner and learn kind of how to do it the right way. And so that search led me to Eric and a very young Abundo. I joined Abundo about 3 months into the firm's history. And I think that Eric actually kind of hired me because he wanted to do social media, and he saw me and he thought, young person, that means this person's probably good at social media. I actually have almost zero interest in social media. I don't use pretty much anything. Don't use Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that. But it got me in the door. And kind of as I was about a year into my time with Abundo, we wanted to start building some tools, some technology, because, kind of as Eric talked about on that podcast, with advice only, we have a very different model than is typical in the industry. And so, some of the things that we wanted to do and some of the ways we wanted to help our clients, there just isn't technology that existed to do that. One of the prime examples of that is, we as advice only, we don't manage our clients' assets for them. We don't take custody of their accounts. We give them, direct advice, and they actually execute it on their own. And technology to essentially do that in an efficient manner really didn't exist at all. I remember with literally sitting in coffee shops with Eric before we'd meet with clients and doing kind of all the calculations by hand. I was just like, there's no way that this is the most efficient way to do this. And so we started building our own technology to be able to help people execute those trades. And it kind of all started off with spreadsheets and stuff like that, but kind of eventually transitioned into me actually coding things and making this into some real technology. That was kind of the background of how I transitioned from actually wanting to be a financial planner to kind of building the technology itself.
It's very cool. And one of the things that I was always very impressed by, it's often said very casually, Eric will tell people, you took a few months and taught yourself how to code. So, and then in my mind, and I think everyone else's mind, it's like, whoa, I could take a few years and probably not be as good at Ethan as this. So what did you do in that time frame and that sort of semi-career change from financial planning to learning how to code? How did you do that? How did you teach yourself how to become a pro?
Well, first I would credit Eric with actually giving me the time and the space to essentially take on this challenge. I mean, essentially at the time it was just me and him, and so he's like, okay, let's devote 50% of our workforce to just learning how to code. So in the future we had this idea that we would be able to have our own technology and kind of make that future possible. But into how I actually did it, I mean, I was starting from pretty much block zero. I knew literally nothing. In college I took one course that a calculus course that we did a little bit of programming in a language called R, but I had, essentially no experience. So I had to actually like figure out, which language do we actually want, which coding language do we actually want to even do this project in, starting all the way from that. But, pretty much just the simple answer is the internet, just reading a lot of forums and stuff like that. And, there's a ton of YouTube channels that are all devoted to helping people learn how to code. And I also use a site called Code Academy, which is like, a learn to code kind of programs course. But it was just a lot of that stuff and a lot of just grinding and not giving up. And luckily when I was building it, or when I was learning how to code, I wasn't just I'm going to learn how to code. I was doing everything specifically to help build Uvest, which is the investing technology that we built. And so that kind of helped me, starting from ground zero, that helped me have a sense of direction of where I wanted to go with everything. So that kind of, helped me steer what I was learning. But yeah, it was definitely a very challenging experience. And it was also, I'd say like if I was doing this right now, it'd be very different too, just with the invention of AI. It's a very different world, I think, learning how to program now versus, even 4 years ago. Because one of the challenges too is just I had, nobody I essentially didn't have any mentors or anything like that. Like if I had a question, if I was missing something when I was trying to learn, like I had no way of knowing that. I had no one to
Right.
go, essentially like ask like, hey, what am I doing wrong here? Like, why isn't this working? But luckily there's, a ton of forums and stuff online. Kind of every question require a lot of Googling and digging and stuff like that. But yeah, pretty much the internet.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk more later about what you see as some of the future of these tools. But maybe just to start off with, you painted that picture of the two co-founders in the coffee shop. Potentially a nice little cliche image there, but that's
Yeah.
probably where a lot of the origins of this came out. So could you just talk about a couple of the initial projects that you worked on? Like specifically, what was it that you were building, what problem you were solving, and what you really came up with?
Yeah. So the initial problem, like very specifically, was we have a client with an account and it has X amount of cash. And based on their risk tolerance, we want to give them specific index funds to buy to essentially get the correct risk tolerance asset allocation in their portfolio. And so that problem in itself is not super difficult because essentially it's just a calculator. You find the percentage of assets for each asset class to get the correct risk tolerance, and then you use the current market price to get that the amount of shares that they need to buy. And so I built essentially a calculator to do that in Google Sheets. And so that was kind of Uvest version 1. So I building that calculator in Google Sheets there. But yeah, so that was like the very, very first project.
Very cool. All right, so we that's Uvest and really a very specific use case for investments, a bit of an origin story of Abundo's tech. It's clearly evolved into something much more than just that, right? Much more significant. So
Yeah.
from the client side, there's an awesome, what they would refer to as the Abundo client portal, does a whole bunch of things. From the advisor side, we would call it playfully the bun. Maybe you can even talk about the origin story of the name. But it's essentially a huge CRM platform, client financial planning tool that helps all of us do our jobs well. So could you talk about that transition just from some initial Google Sheet calculators to this awesome software that's running the business?
Yeah. So yeah, after completing the actual coded version of US and getting that to a point where we were happy with it, kind of my next challenge was building what has now become the bun and the client portal. And kind of where this came from is we had been using different CRMs and financial planning tools, and kind of what we found is that there isn't really anything that exists to help a low-cost advice-only financial planning firm in terms of CRMs and stuff like that. And it kind of makes sense because when you think about it, the advice-only business model has not been around for that long. It's really kind of come around in the last 5 or 6 years, and especially low-cost advice-only financial planning is very new. And so just the technology that is out there is not really built to help firms like us. I think the typical advisor, charging an assets under management fee of 1%, might be expecting to make, $10,000 a year off of a single client. And so you don't really need to be as efficient in delivering a great client experience when you're making, that kind of fee per client because you only have to work with, 50, 60 clients or whatever to have a sustainable business. But with us, we're making closer to about, $2,000 a year, a little bit over that per, household that we're working with. And so we have to be a lot more efficient so each advisor can work with, 100 or more households and still deliver a great client experience for all of those households.
All right. And so all of the stuff that we have now is great for many different people. Like it's great for the advisor community at Abundo. It's great for the clients to have software they can interface with that gives them really their financial to-do list all on one page. So all of that stuff is awesome. What's next? What are the things that number you that you feel like these are financial planning problems worth solving from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that excite me. I think number one that kind of keeps popping up is probably how can we utilize AI to make everything that we're doing in the bun and all of our technology just better. We've had for a while a system that we call Parabot, which is essentially our little version, I guess, of ChatGPT, but it's created specifically to be an assistant for our financial planners. And so that's a direct way for our advisors to just talk with an AI chatbot, and we're constantly trying to make that better. But I think there's a ton of different ways that AI can be utilized in kind of all different parts of the bun in more subtle ways. Another thing that really excites me is currently working on version 2 of UVest, trying to make that a lot better. And I think the next big challenge that I'm really excited about is creating a full, essentially financial planning software to integrate with the bun. I think one thing I've noticed about the technology landscape for essentially financial planning assistance tools is that it is very segmented. It seems like there is, essentially for each different little task that you might have as a financial planner, there is a different piece of technology.
Absolutely.
And nothing that is, really an overarching thing that connects all of them. And so you end up just having 10 different logins or whatever, and, your clients can have multiple logins and stuff like that. The biggest thing too is, nothing is really talking to each other, or at least not to the extent that it could be. And I think that was one of the big advantages that we're having with building our technology is it can be very ambitious, but we're essentially building everything into this one platform that, just can, because it's all in one area, can all work together well.
Right. And it seems that when speaking with clients, it's common to end up saying, yeah, this software that we use is a great retirement planning tool, but we don't really like its budgeting interface that much, right? You could use one of these other 3 tools for budgeting, or an advisor may say, hey, I've got this really cool tool I found on the internet for prioritizing your debt repayments. But it turns out our financial planning software is kind of mediocre. So those are the kind of things that you're talking about, where even just tools that a client might use, forgetting the whole landscape of 10 or 12 tools an advisor might use for taxes or asset allocation or something like that. You're talking about taking all of that and really simplifying and condensing it into one really useful tool, right? That could cover all of those topics well. Is that a fair summary of that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary of that. And the other thing too is, we are serving, I would say, a different demographic than a typical financial planner. And so, our financial planning software right now is very much centered on retirees, because that is kind of the prototypical, financial planning client. But we find that our clients are typically younger than that, usually in their 30s and 40s. And so a lot of the software out there for financial planning is just not really built to help that type of client. So that's something that excites me a lot, is kind of being able to some level pioneer financial planning software for that age demographic.
That's very cool. So you mentioned AI a couple times, and I think just because that word gets mentioned in a lot of different business contexts, it's kind of just out there in the world a lot right now. It's important to me to know, okay, what does that actually mean? It's easy to say, but what does it actually do? And one of the things that I've appreciated about you is that you use it for very practical purposes. It's clear how it manifests in our business. So I'm just curious, maybe you could talk about one application, because there's so many, we don't need to go into all of them, but what's one thing where you feel like AI has really been a key enabler of the work that we do from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, so I think one good example is technology called Parabot. So for our business and our low fees. Having pair planners just isn't really super practical, and it never has been. But we have this tool called Parabot, which is essentially a digital pair planner leveraging AI. So, our advisors can ask it questions. They can bounce ideas off of it when they're, prepping for client meetings and stuff like that. And I think, that has been something that's been really helpful. Kind of like, as I talked about earlier, like for me, when I was, learning to code kind of by myself, I didn't have anyone, I didn't have any mentors or anything like that I could go ask a problem. I could go talk about a problem. I had to essentially figure it out on my own. And there was no, if I was missing something, there was really no way for me to know that. And having AI kind of allows me, when I'm doing my coding, to have, an assistant or just someone to bounce ideas off of. And that helps tremendously. I think I've become a better coder myself just having, ChatGPT to talk to. And so I think kind of the same thing can be done with financial planning. We obviously, as you mentioned earlier, like, we have a team of planners and everyone can talk to each other, ask each other questions. But having a, kind of virtual assistant that has unlimited patience and is, very, very knowledgeable is just very different and very helpful application of AI, I think.
And the reality is that, like, even in a knowledge profession, it always seems like you should project the idea that you know everything. But the sort of meme image of a doctor using, WebMD or Google in the back room, like, that's just a reality across the entirety of financial planning. Like, there's so much to know that nobody can know every single thing. Right. So we have our team that we can use for that, but we also have this great tool that you built that knows a lot about all of the different data inputs from out in the world and from that we collect about our clients. So it's another helpful facilitator of getting access to fast information and things that may not have occurred to you, at first glance. So I think all of this is awesome stuff. And the last thing that I just wanted to make sure that we chatted about is I think a lot about your story, as there are a lot of career changing stories at Abundo. A lot of them are people, me included, who came into financial planning from other careers, but you really went a slightly different way out of financial planning adjacent tech. So if there are people out there who are like you, who are maybe like tech interested or tech inclined, but don't have the skill set yet, like what would you give as a recommendation back to like early Abundo before you started this, if other people are interested in that type of career, financial planning role?
Yes, I would say if you want to, learn how to code, learn how to, essentially start from zero, learn how to code. The number one thing that helped me was just having a project, and a pretty ambitious project, to be gearing everything that I was learning towards. That, really, even though I didn't know where to start, having that finish line helped me kind of get going along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like instead of just learning about it in a textbook form, you were able to take any type of textbook or video learning that you did and apply it to something in real time that was solving an actual problem. So that helped your brain make all the connections and allowed you to test and learn things in real time, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it allowed me to just, be interested in what I was working on.
Yeah.
Like I really wanted to solve this problem. I saw all the different ways that it could, really improve Abundo, and I just, it was fun for me. I think I've kind of discovered about myself that I am very hardworking, and I can put a lot of time into a problem when I want to solve it. It's something that I'm interested in. And kind of the opposite is true when it's a problem that I'm not interested in. And so I think I kind of found, with myself, like in a typical classroom environment where it's just kind of here's some busy work, or here's just some problems to solve that I wasn't specifically interested in, I had a tougher time getting really engaged. And so I think if I would have gone a more like kind of classic route of like a boot camp for coding, I would have had a tougher time. But just essentially approaching it, completely on my own, just with a project in mind, I think allowed me to have the fastest path to kind of, mastery with coding.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, one more bonus question. So I'm curious. You
Yeah.
started out at the very beginning saying that you were interested in the FIRE movement. That was how you got into the general financial planning world. Is FIRE still something that interests you currently?
FIRE is definitely very much, on my mind. One thing is I absolutely love what I do. So I think a lot of people that are interested in, I think the kind of cliche, with FIRE is like, oh, I hate my job and I just want to save up as fast as I can so I can be out of here. But no, I definitely want to become financially independent. So me and my wife have the freedom to spend our time how we choose to. And yes, it has greatly affected our decision making. We currently are not renting. We don't have any plans to buy a home. We're very lucky that my wife's family has kind of an extra house that we can spend some time in. But yeah, it is constantly something I'm thinking about, and definitely very much striving to be on the path for.
Very cool. All right. Well, Ethan Jung, the tech wizard of Abundo. I appreciate you joining and sharing some of your insights about tech and financial planning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.